But if a kid gets a D on it, and he used a great analogy, he goes, if a kid gets a D on a test, well, is that going to hurt his confidence, or is that going to be the motivation for him to study, right? And to get better, and to then go back and do better on the next test. It's the same thing here. Like, this is the motivation, right? The players that come in here and get these evals, whether they're graded as an NAI, D2, FCS, G5, Power 4, right? It's the motivation to get to the next level. And that's the one thing we share with everybody that we evaluate, is not just like, here's where you're at and here's why. Yeah, here's where you're at, here's why specifically, but also here's what you can do to go from an FCS to a G5 or a D2 to an FCS. And a lot of people don't know how to do that to show it on their game film, right? How to Get a College Football Scholarship, a series where we evaluate active high school football players. We break down their game film and let them know what level they have the best chance of earning a scholarship in, whether that's Division I FCS, G5 Power 4, Division II, or NAI. And then ultimately, we let them know at the end what they need to do to get to the next level. And joining me today is our head coach here at Next Play, Brian Overton, who has over 15 years of Division I recruiting experience. Also, if you're interested in getting a professional evaluation for your son, I'll leave a link in the description below where you could see if he meets the criteria. So, Brian, who do we have today? Break us down. What are we looking at? Who are we breaking down?
Yeah, so I got a really good young player today, 2028 offensive lineman, about
Young.
6'3", yeah, really young, 6'3", about 230 pounds. But you got to remember he's probably 15 years old, at the most right now.
6'3",
But
230 or 330?
230.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
230. So he's got a lot of room in that frame, which we'll talk about. But I like the kid. He showed some really good stuff on here. Again, before we get into it, just some little things. Again, we'll mention this a lot, but this is obviously not a full evaluation that we're given here. What was sent to the player and the family, but I do like to highlight some things along the way that was sent to them. This one did not have an information slide, obviously, so we coached him up on his information slide and the information that needed to be included as a freshman here. That's a big piece of the puzzle. Obviously, we talk a lot about it. You don't see it as very much at all. So we always coach all our guys up on that. So we had him do it there, and then with him being a freshman, as you can see there, I've got it paused. He had a little over 2.5 minutes on his tape, which is really good. It was a really good time frame for a freshman player and a young player. So we had him adjust just a few things, but for the most part, it was more, position specific things we liked about him, how to level up his evaluation, and some things he had going for him right now. We had him shuffle a couple of plays, but again, on this one, I'm going to just kind of let it run a little bit here. And I really wanted to do, we try to, we get a lot of evaluations in, get great feedback from them. So I try to mix it up as much as I can. I don't always want to do, a junior or a guy getting ready to graduate, you know what I mean? Things like that. I try to spread it out. So, even the younger players can kind of get an idea of what we send to them and things they can do to get better as well, and how to get started and things like that. So I really like it, when we get, talented young players as well, because you can't get an evaluation too early, guys. There's no such thing because you can learn so much from it. Not only from, how to get better as a player, but how to actually set up your highlight tape correctly and do some things like that. So I encourage all the young players that are watching this and families of young players, it's never too early to get an evaluation. And I would actually suggest that you get one, every year. Kind of like going to the doctor. You only find out new things if you don't go once a year. So, because things can change from year to year. So, we had him do an information slide. And after that, I'm gonna just kind of let it run here and just kind of talk about him as we go along here. So he's playing left guard, as you can see the arrow there. That guy kind of ran up on him on his first play. We had him adjust his first play, and I'll show you which one it is here in a second. But just as I said earlier, I like his size. He's 6'3". He's got some nastiness to him. You don't see that a ton in a young player, to be honest with you. Just overall nastiness. which I'm big on. If you've watched these in the trenches and the offensive and defensive line, I love nastiness early from players. Um, and I really like his get off. He's got a pretty good base, as you can see there on that deuce block.
Mm.
And I love the way he finishes block. So those are
Dude,
some
what
things he's really got going for him early.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second because the nastiness is something that, college coaches are really looking for, right? They want guys like think if you were a coach, right? You want a guy that's going to go out on the field and try to like, literally just hurt people, right? Legally, right? Not get flags and stuff like that, but you want people to, really be passionate about what they're doing and push people around and dominate, right? Like if you're a coach, don't you want a guy like that or a guy that just like plays well? No, you want a guy that plays really well and does it like violently and harshly and moves people around. And so if you're watching this right now, that's a mentality, right? A lot of the guys that, that we mentor, and I look at Dax, for example, he's one of the players that was a good player, but didn't really play with violence from first year. And we were mentoring him. And then in his second year, his game film is crazy different. And he leveled up big time because he really played violently along with playing well. And so this is a mindset thing, guys. Like if you're a player right now watching this, you're a parent watching this, like you can turn this on and level up your game film by just adding that piece to it. And that's mindset, right? That's the way you attack every single play when you're on the field, right? So that's a switch you can make right now. And it's a decision you can make that I'm gonna be violent. I'm gonna be violent legally, right? Not get penalties, but I'm gonna be violent every play I'm on the field, and I'm gonna try to dominate the guy in front of me. That's mindset, right? Like that's
Yeah,
something you
and
can do
it's
right now.
yeah, and it speaks to like just being fully transparent, guys. Like this, that's hard to coach. Like 9 times out of 10, the kid's either got that or he doesn't. Right. And if you're going to play the game on the college level, you have to play. I don't care what position you're playing, maybe outside of like quarterback. You want to see them play with emotion and all that good stuff. I get all that. But any other position, man, the game's just too hard. It's too physical of a game. And so if you take a talented kid, you know what I mean, that is not very physical and doesn't fly around and doesn't play the game with nastiness and a chip on their shoulder, you know, um, that's. I'm not going to say it's impossible to coach because it comes out of guys late sometimes, but it's hard to coach. So if you show it early on, like in your high school career, on tape, even if you're not quite as talented, they can get you better as a player. You know what I mean? That's the way they look at it as a coach. Okay, I can coach technique. I can coach certain things that'll make them better as a player. We're going to get them bigger and stronger and faster or whatever they're trying to do with you based on your position. It's really hard for them to wrap their head around, like, do they love the game enough where it shows on tape, where they're willing to play the game with the physicality that it takes and the nastiness that it takes to play on the college level. Okay. That gets caught up in their head, when they're watching the tape. So if you watch something like this, especially as a young player, really young player, and he's already doing it, that's just like any other skill that he's doing. It's only going to get better. So imagine how physical he's going to play, how violent he's going to play, the nastiness he's going to play with when he continues to get bigger and stronger. And so that's what you have to think about, when coaches are watching this tape. And this is a good example right here. Like he comes out of his hips right there, you know what I mean? But he wasn't satisfied with that. The guy ends up 15 yards down the field. That's one of them that we had him move up, a little bit in the tape. And same thing here. Like this doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're watching a young kid like this, like the tape cut off, this was a good block down there on the goal line. The tape doesn't cut off. I guarantee he was trying to take this guy out the back of the end zone. I
Right.
guarantee you he was. And again, that speaks to his mindset and his mentality. And you see it enough on here that really gets you excited about him, as a young player.
Hmm. Love it, man. What plays did you have him move around?
Yeah, so that was one of them, and then we've got one coming up here in a second. I wasn't going to skip to it because I was going to let it run,
Okay.
but it was only a couple because again he's got about 2.5 minutes on there, but we also had him take one or two out as well, so it kind of evened it out. But it was more of a play, that he got out and kind of got running on where you could kind of see his athleticism as well. coming up here in a second. But again, as a young offensive lineman, you got to remember now he's 6'3". Okay, he's going to have the ability to put on an exorbitant amount of weight between now in his junior or senior year, obviously. But he already has the frame to do it. You know what I mean? We're not talking about a 6 foot guy here. You're talking about a 6'3" kid. With already some good weight. And some people would say, well, coach, he's only 230 pounds. But again, he's 15. I'm guessing, he's probably 15 years
14,
old.
15, yeah.
So that's not terrible. That's not a terrible weight. You got to remember, there's really good players coming out their senior year that, are 260 pounds, 70 pounds. That's only, 30 pounds, more than this one. So again, really good young player for a lot of the reasons that we talked about. I wanted to show a young player so to show people it's never too early to start, never too early to get an evaluation. And this kid's got enough tape that you can really dive into it and tell him some things he can get better at and really give him a good starting point on where he should be targeting in his outreach.
So where should he be targeting?
So having you guys watched everything, sometimes we don't watch the whole tape, but I thought it was good to just see the whole thing for him being a young player like that. I think with the tools he's shown, right away, and the big one again, I can't emphasize enough. And I know some people are going to think, it's not as relevant as others, but I'm telling you it is. I mean, I've done this a long time. Just the passion and the nastiness he plays with. He plays with good pad level already, even though he's not crazy strong yet, but he's going to be. So having said all that, with the upside and the frame, what it is, and how much room he has to put on good weight, we have him evaluated as Division II, Division I FCS right now, targeting his outreach because of the growth that we feel like he's going to make physically to go along with what he's already doing really well. So I think when the body really starts to match then when I say the body, like, if he's, and
Right.
it's not going to happen overnight, guys. If he plays, let's just say next year, if he's got a good plan and even if he gains 15, 20 pounds next year, and let's say he's 6'3" and a half, 250 pounds as a sophomore, right? He's right on track. And I promise you his tape is, I mean, he's getting bigger and stronger. His tape will look better than it does this year. And if he keeps doing that, obviously with a young player, this is a projection. I think that's, I think that's his floor, where he will land, when it's all said and done, now, again, this is why you get an evaluation every year. If he gets exponentially better next year, that may change as a sophomore, because
Mhm.
that'll be a year, a whole year, from now, if he got it done during the same time next year. But we had him targeting Division II FCS based on his tape right now.
Okay. And what does he need to do to get to that next level, right? To get to that to start really being evaluated as a Division I G5, and maybe
Yeah,
even a Power 4 in the future.
yeah. So I think a couple things. One, I talked about it a little bit, is the basics: bigger, stronger, and faster. Right. I think if he, and we told him this in the evaluation, if he just gets a really good plan on, gaining some really good weight, putting on some really good muscle, and just keep growing, getting his power better, where he can, he drives some people off the ball now, but I'm talking about like really come out of his hips and change the line of scrimmage every time he comes off the ball. Because if you're talking about high level college football, we talked about this before at certain positions, like that's what it looks like. Like they change the line of scrimmage every time the ball snaps. No matter who's lined up in front of him. And again, as a young player, he's got a long time to get better and stronger and all that good stuff. But he's got to just do the basics: bigger, faster, stronger. Is one thing that we told him in the video. The other thing that I would highly recommend is that he gets some reps at center. Okay, because of he's a good interior player. And I'm not even saying that they'll play him at center at his high school. I'm talking about even if it's at practice, going out early at practice and snapping to the quarterback or getting some reps at it, going to the coach and say, hey, coach, can I be the backup center? God forbid something happens to our center. I'd love to be able to move in there and get some tape at center. And because we've talked about it a lot over the course of, doing a lot of these and on podcasts and things, if you can play all three of those interior spots, you become really, really valuable at the offensive line spot, especially if you can snap. It's hard to find really good centers in high school, guys that have actually done it. Most of the time, it's projection. Most of the time, they get them on their roster in college ball, and they say, man, he'd probably make a pretty good center. But he's never done it before, so they got to take the time. He's never snapped, so it's a progression. And that's now they're already in college. Whereas if
Right.
they can see that you can do it, and again, it doesn't necessarily have to show up on the tape. It can come up in the recruiting process. Hey, coach, I can play center too. I'm the backup center. I can snap. I'm willing to snap. I'm willing to play center. I can make all the calls. That makes you so much more valuable in that. So that was a recommendation too to level up his evaluation, is being able to play center. And if you can get some on tape, that's great. But if not, you can use it on your social media, snapping. You can show examples of that and tagging coaches, and a lot of things we can get into that we do with our guys that play multiple positions, to be able to show coaches you can do it. So those are the two biggest things. Was just the bigger, faster, and stronger, adding that weight and that power to the things he's already doing. That flexibility, keep working on the flexibility. I think he moves pretty well, but doing all those things, and then maybe getting some center work and starting to build the foundation to be able to sell yourself as a 3-position interior player may really help him level up that evaluation over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, love that. All right, awesome, man. Super good. Great young player, lot of opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And it's good that he is getting this evaluation now, because the changes that, obviously this isn't the full evaluation we sent to him, right? This is a brief overview, but the changes that we sent to him and the improvements that he can make are going to make a big difference, right? And Brian, you're gonna be surprised, man. We actually one of our team members, Jamel, came up to me and was like, "Hey, a parent wanted to get their son an evaluation, but they were hesitant because they were worried about hurting his confidence." And that's a parenting choice, right?
Right.
But if a kid gets a D on it, and he used a great analogy, because if a kid gets a D on a test, well, is that going to hurt his confidence, or is that going to be the motivation for him to study, right, and to get better, and to then go back and do better on the next test? It's the same thing here. Like, this is the motivation, right? The players that come in here and get these evals, whether they're graded as an NAI, D2, FCS, G5, Power 4, right? It's the motivation to get to the next level. And that's the one thing we share with everybody that we evaluate, is not just like, here's where you're at and here's why. Yeah, here's where you're at, here's why specifically, but also here's what you can do to go from an FCS to a G5, or a D2 to an FCS. And a lot of people don't know how to do that, to show it on their game film, right? Because they do their workouts, they go to trainers, they have their coaches on the football field. But there's a difference between getting better on the football field and having somebody that does hundreds, and if not, you've done thousands of evaluations in your career, tell
Yeah.
you what to do to make your game film look better on the field. And it's
Yeah.
it's a critical thing, guys. So if you haven't gotten a professional evaluation, and you'd like to see if your son meets the criteria to get one, we'll leave a link in the description below this video. And if you're on YouTube, look, only 21% of our viewers are subscribers. And if you like our content, definitely consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate it to help us to continue to make really good content for you. So really appreciate having you. By the way, we post evaluations every single Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific, as well as a podcast every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, and a how-to/coaching video every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific. So again, make sure to subscribe, or consider subscribing if you enjoy hanging out with Brian and myself. If not, all good. We'll see you on the next one.